2021, 10 a.m. session. There is no public testimony during this review session. The first item up is appeals calendar, continued hearings, item number 21, 2019-68A, 235 Industrial Loop, Staten Island.
Oops, sorry, 1 second. I don't know why, but it was in the wrong place. Okay, sorry. Okay, we now have fire department conditional sign off, and those conditions should be stated in the resolution. I can read them quickly. The development will be provided with a fire suppression system sprinkler throughout. There is an existing fire hydrant located less than 250 feet. In addition to filing with this office, you are required to call Bureau of Facilities Management to schedule an appointment to evaluate plans for any municipal fire alarm box requirement. Yes, basically. So in other words, for our council to include those requirements in the resolution. And we also have DEP sign off. So I don't think there are any open issues. So we can close this. Okay, any other comments on this?
No.
Okay. Item number 22, 2019, 195A, 191 Industrial Loop, Staten Island.
Same. It's the same situation. We have a conditional letter of no objection from fire department, and those conditions should be part of our sign off of our resolution. With respect to the DEP sign off, applicant reminds us that there was a 2020 master plan submitted to us in May. And that site connections will be made pursuant to the master plan, and a site connection proposal has now been filed with DEP. Is there something else, Tony?
No, that's what I was going to say.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
we don't have sign off from DEP on that, although the applicant, there's a lot of communication going back and forth between DEP and Todd. But they have filed the SCP. It's just that it wasn't forwarded to the division where Paulina and the project manager, those people are. So we're hoping that they get to see it and approve it.
But it's a master plan. So they're doing it.
The master plan covers all of Industrial Loop. It's just that particular, they're saying they need the SCP, and it was filed.
Yes.
He gave them there's a certain code, certain application number. It's just they want to see the actual plan, Paulina and them, and that's what they're waiting for.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
But and then the second thing is fire department did approve, although on the plan I noticed that they had not included the sprinkler note on the plan. So I had the applicant revise the plan to add the sprinkler note and then sent it to John on Friday. So
I think that was submitted. Yes.
yeah, I don't think we need a further letter. It's just like I said, John, I noticed that they didn't have the sprinkler note on the plan.
Right. Okay.
So they revised the plan. Todd revised the plan and sent that in.
Okay. Right. And okay. So I'm not sure. Can we? Or is it okay?
I think we can close with we
Yes.
can close, and I'm sure DEP, as long as they have a copy of it,
Mhm. Okay.
they'll get it.
Any other comments on this? No. Okay.
Zoning calendar, new cases, item number 23, 2018 13BZ 30-32 Village Road North, Brooklyn.
Okay. Just a second. My computer is taking a long time to load. Sorry, 1 second. Okay. We have proof of service of initial application to officials and of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. Community board recommends approval with 3 opposed. We have 2 letters in support. This application has been at the agency for a long time, and an applicant's requests have been taken off calendar, which is a practice we no longer allow, preferring withdrawal and resubmission when ready. So this should be one of maybe the last application that might still be floating around off calendar.
There's one more.
There is one more that's actually off calendar.
Yeah,
should
it's a GCO.
Okay, but still, we should put them on calendar, even if it's, you know, 6 months.
There's an additional one, sorry, that I'm aware of that's off calendar as well.
Yeah, we shouldn't have things really off calendar so that we remind ourselves they exist. You know, otherwise we forget. This is 3 years ago and we forget, right?
It's an unusual circumstance, that
Yeah.
one, very unusual. Okay.
Okay, whatever. Okay. Anyway, this is an application for a variance and a 7319 special permit to allow a school in an M11 zoning district. So if we always start with the 7319 because that's the effort to have a lesser variance and not need a use waiver, a use variance, right? So for the 7319, of course, we have threshold questions that need to be answered with supporting materials. These should have been discussed in the statement of facts and not only in the programmatic needs report. So the statement of facts is really skimpy on the findings and relying on other documents. It forces the commissioners to wander around through the application and try to construct the argument for the applicant. It's not our job. So if you don't have an argument, then maybe you don't have a case. You need to make the argument in the statement of facts. First, a 7319 is only available for institutions that meet the 1210 definition of school. It's a defined term. So the applicant must provide proof that it is meeting the New York State education law requirements under section 3204, 3205, and 3210. That's what it's defined as in section 1210 as a zoning resolution. Whether or not an institution has a so-called beds number from the state education department is completely irrelevant to this question, since these codes have to do with building safety and relative to the size of enrollment and assign an ID number to the institution, to the building. It's actually about building safety. They have nothing at all to do with whether the institution complies with education law sections 3204, 3205, and 3210, hence would be eligible for 7319 special permit. Schools that qualify for the 7319 never need to argue the value of their beds code, but instead provide a copy of their charter, school brochures, and curriculum, along with the relevant sections of the New York State education law. Although the programmatic needs report states that the school is in compliance with the section of the education law, no backup information was provided to support it. The report doesn't even include a description of the class schedules and curriculum, and room utilization diagrams indicate that the specialty rooms aren't used at all, or like once a week or something like that. So I don't see how it complies with the standards. Under the 2018 amendment of the education law, section 3204 requires that the commissioner of the Department of Education decide whether the required educational program equivalency has been met. And then there are a lot of, regulation was adopted. There was a regulation subsequently adopted in 2019 that goes through the minimum standards for educational equivalency, which goes on and says arithmetic, science, and math, grades 1 to 6, arithmetic, science and technology, English language, art, social studies. It goes on and on and on. There's a lot, there's a big list. So I don't see a demonstration that this is a 7319 school. Another of the 7319 threshold questions is proof that the school conducted a search within its catchment area of sites where school would be permitted as of right. This should be a letter provided by the real estate broker who conducted the search, and include the search criteria and list the available sites actually considered during the search and why they were rejected. We are told in the programmatic needs report that the catchment area is very large. It includes Gravesend, Marine Park, Madison, Flatbush, and Midwood. So that's a very large catchment area, much larger than a lot of the ones that we see for schools. And so we need demonstration that that the school looked in all of those places to find a site of suitable proportions. The site does meet the third finding of being within 400 feet of a district where such use is as of right. The DOB objection is defective at points 6 and 7 and not citing to a section in the zoning resolution, so it needs to be cured. An as of right drawing is wrong, since it is showing a 2-story school, which is not a permitted use in the M11. However, community facility is a permitted use, so a fully built as of right community facility might actually not need a variance, and then we would just be considering the 7319, assuming the institution meets those findings. So first, the as of right FAR for a community facility in an M11 is 2.4, as opposed to what the as of right is showing, which is just a 1-story building. There are no side yard requirements. The rear yard requirement is 20 feet. Applicants should provide developed as of right community facility drawings that are only in need of the 7319 waiver. That way we can see what the scope of the variance should be. The front lot line is opposite a C13 R5 zoning district. So it isn't actually clear to me, and I'd like a ZRD 1 on this. It isn't clear to me that section 43-304 that regulates front yards along district boundary lines that are opposite a residence district applies, since this is a C1 overlay. And so it's actually, when you're reviewing C overlays, you review all the regulations in the commercial district regulations. So I'm not really sure, and I don't know if the board has ever really officially opined on this question. I know we had something that was kind of similar with respect to signs in a mixed use MR district, but that was a mixed use district. And the question was whether the certain sign regulations would apply in that MX district, but actually the board's decision, I think it was upheld, but now I can't remember. But anyway,
It was upheld.
It was upheld. So that's the question. Does that control? It doesn't really control because it was specific to that sign regulation. And I don't know that the board has ever opined on whether a C district in an overlay on an R is a residence district for the purpose of these kind of protective regulations. So I think they should get a ZRD1 on that. In any event, this is a 174-foot deep lot with only a 20-foot rear yard requirement above the first floor. Applicant should explain why a front yard of some depth cannot be provided, since the front yard study shows adjacent properties with 14 feet and 16-foot front yards. The 7221 neighborhood character discussion in the statement of facts is sparse, is putting let's say, framing it politely. You need to demonstrate that the height and absence of yards will not negatively impact the neighbors. This is, except for the early 20th century school, which is right on the corner, which is set back very far from the street and surrounded by yards. This is a very tall structure for the area, opposite 2-story row houses and adjacent to a 1-family home over which it will tower. You need to provide renderings to show the building in context. And I do want to point out that this is the sad thing about school design today that we see on so many of these schools. We occasionally have a school that's fabulous looking, but most of the time we have school designs that are boxes with holes in them called windows, right? And then you have right at the diagonal to this, one of the greatest examples of early 20th century school design done in neo-Gothic style with courtyards. It's a gorgeous building. And so zero relationship between the pride of school design back in the early 20th century versus the utilitarian nature of school building, because I don't even want to use the word design, where in the early 21st century, we've gone a long way down in our, let's say, quality. The statement of facts misstates the height of the building at 51 foot 8 inches. That's the height of the street wall before the setback. The overall height of the building above curb level is not provided on any of the drawings, but when I do the math, it is 75 feet to the roof and 79 feet to the top of the parapet, which, by the way, is not permitted as an obstruction, I believe, higher than 42 inches, not 48 inches as shown. Pretty sure that's true. The bulkhead height to the top of the elevator, that should be checked because I didn't look it up. The bulkhead height to the top of the elevator is also not given. They need to provide those heights. The architecture must be more respectful, as I said, of the neighboring context. It's not respectful at all. And they need to provide an actual building height study, not a building number of stories study, because the number of stories doesn't tell us anything. This has very high floor to ceiling for the gym, and the first floor, I believe, also. They need to show compliance with New York State and New York City maximum occupancies for preschool classrooms. I believe that's 20 to 22 students per room at 35 square feet per student. They're showing 25 students in those preschool rooms. I'm not sure that's allowed. The class, which consequently makes the classrooms larger perhaps than they need to be. The programmatic needs report at page 12 states that there, as I said, will be 25 students per class. You need to provide supporting regulations for this because I haven't found them. The chart in the report confirms my research that a maximum of 20 students are permitted in the 4 to 5 year age range, and only actually 15 students in the 3 to 4 year range, and 12 in the 2 to 3s. So actually, according to its own materials, the rooms for the preschool are allowing too many kids in the class, and the rooms are therefore too large. And this is more of a programmatic question. If there are 2 classrooms each for pre-K and K levels, how does that work for their graduation up to elementary school if there is only 1 classroom / grade at that level? Does it assume that exactly 50% of the students at the pre-K and K levels will be boys, and therefore, and this is a boys' school, so they'll be the only ones who graduate up into this school? The programmatic needs analysis states that students will use the back staircase for arrival and dismissal. That would require access to the 5-foot side yard to the street. One side yard is adjacent to a private house and seems to me to be an unacceptable route to ensure respect for that neighbor, not to mention noise sources. They need to describe in more detail with a site plan the use of the site for arrival, dismissal, and play, and show fencing all the way around the site and acoustical treatment. How are you going to protect the neighbor from the noise of the school children? I actually think that on that passageway along the shared lot line with the residential use should not be available to students except for emergency egress. So it actually should be closed with a gate. And then you use the other side for access to students that's adjacent to a commercial property. Also, I'd like to know how the sizes of the midrash and the gym were determined. What kind of activities can be done with 76 children in a room at a time? I didn't understand that at all. Like standing in place, it's really crowded. How can you have 76 children at a time in a room unless they're seated on chairs? And what is the model for this room size? So how did we get to that size? Also, the maximum street wall height for a community facility in an M11 is the lesser of 3 stories or 35 feet. So the hatching on the proposed for areas of requested waiver is incorrect. So actually, all the objections have to be studied for accuracy because I'm not sure the objections are correct. They need to show the property lines clearly on the site plan and provide overall site dimensions. I can't actually tell where the property lines are because the line weights are the same as just like dimension lines. They also provided us this completely illegible easement document. If you're giving us something and it's not legible, why are you giving it to us? Provide a transcription of that. That was just submitted to us on Friday afternoon. You know, kind of a useless submission. They need to also provide a site survey. We always require a site survey. They need to indicate finished materials on the elevations and coordinate the elevations with the plans. For example, there are no windows shown at the rear of the 5th floor, whereas the plans show that there are. So the plans and the elevations aren't coordinated. They need to show the fence at the roof area on the plans, elevations, and sections, and provide for fire department access as is required. With respect to the trash and refrigerated trash storage, the programmatic needs report at page 116 provides very detailed demand calculations, so they seem to have followed through on that. But we will need noise, air quality, and hazmat review of the site. The site is across Avenue U, also from an E designation, and I don't know whether this is down gradient from that. We need support for the statement that a private bus company will provide busing for the school, and also a restrictive declaration prohibiting parking of school buses in front of the school. And when I say support, I mean like a contract. Who are they making arrangements with that will be doing the private busing? There's also a statement in the programmatic needs report that trash pickup is on Wednesday and Saturday. I was confused by that. This is a religious institution that observes the Sabbath on Saturday. How do you manage something when you're not supposed to be working on a Saturday? So, you know, and trash pickup can result in debris flying all over the site. Who's going to be there to make sure that the site is clean if pickup is on Saturday? And then they said they don't have a recycling program. Isn't recycling required by law? You can't opt out of a recycling program. I don't even understand such a statement. Okay, those were my extensive comments. Apology to the other commissioners, but not to the applicant. Okay, Vice Chair Shanda.
Thank you. Okay, so first of all, starting with the basic zoning thing, in the statement of facts, the applicant needs to make sure that the M11 zoning requirement is stated correctly. The maximum street wall height is 30 feet, not 35 feet.
No, it is 35 feet. You have to look at, there's a little, sorry. There's a little footnote or something. Now I copy pasted and it says in M11 districts for community facility buildings, the maximum height of a front wall shall be 35 feet or 3 stories, whichever is less, and the height above the street wall shall be 35 feet. That's like a drop, you know, you read the regulations with the chart.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it, and I know I'm looking at it and I cannot find it. That's,
okay, I'll find it.
I know I looked for, I vaguely remember, and I was checking for it and I could not. So maybe if you can send me that link, that would be helpful.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll look for it.
Okay, so in that case, I will hold back on that. Also, that there is a required setback of 20 feet. I'm assuming that also, because I didn't see any distinction between the setbacks of 20 feet above the street wall height, that still holds for community facility.
Yes.
Above that height, right? That also needs to be stated in the statement of fact and the zoning waiver section, and also need to mention the parking waiver.
Mm-hmm.
With regards to the proposed program, I had a question, why no recreation use? I'm not clear whether there is any use of the at-grade rear yard for recreation purposes for children, especially for the infant. It wasn't clear for the diagram and definitely not stated anywhere in the programmatic need. So I would like that clarification. Though in reviewing the proposed program and compared to what we have seen in other cases, it seemed reasonable in terms of the allocation of the classrooms. Though I would need more clarification on the cellar as to why the cellar has not been maximized to build to the rear lot line and try to bring in some of the uses to the lower level. Also, would it have not benefited if the gym was placed in the rear lot line from cellar up? That way, one could have eliminated a little bit of the height factor, because you could build up to the height of 23 feet in the rear, one story, and thereby reducing the proposed bulk along Village Road. I would like the applicant to provide a streetscape diagram of Village Road. The front yard waiver to me seemed reasonable given the context, which is predominantly surrounded by buildings with either no front yard or with at most 7 foot deep front yard. And in most of the school cases, we have waived the front yard requirement. So, and given the narrowness of the site, and if they provide a gym in the back, I could see the reason for waiving it. With regards to the elevation, as you pointed out, when I was looking at the elevation diagram, it was very difficult for me to read as to where the setback is coming. It is either that 3-story, I have in my note 30, but I'll correct it to 35. It's very difficult to read that because there isn't any vertical elevational scale that was provided. So one had to guess. So that needs to be provided both in the sections and in the elevation. I think the 51 foot height along Village Road, it's a little too high. It's a narrow street, and that can be improved upon with some setbacks, especially given the fact that the offices are facing the Village Road, and those office spaces, what I have seen from other classes, other schools, it is quite generous, and those office spaces could be reduced. And then the building could be set back from the street line, and that could set the bulk back away from the narrow road, Village Road. With regards to the as of right, I agree with you. The plan that has been provided is absolutely inadequate. The plan should maximize an as of right 2.5 FAR and maximize all the underlying regulations and the same programmatic need arguments to fit into the as of right. And building out the cellar to the lot line, all of those possibilities should be looked at. Agree with you on the alternate side. Nothing has been provided for me to provide any additional comments. With regards to, as I said, Village Road, it's a narrow road, need more clarification. Also on the dispatching of the school bus, the site has a 62 foot frontage. Will it be adequate to accommodate 2 school buses at a time? The abutting commercial use has a curb cut, and the proposed bus drop off and pickup should not block that curb cut, and definitely not the Village Road, because it's an extremely, as I keep repeating, it's a very narrow road. So the applicant needs to indicate in the site plan the location of the proposed bus drop-off area, and also clarify how faculty staff will arrive, and will it affect any on-street parking in the neighborhood. And they need to provide more analysis and narrative associated with high school students' arrival and departure. The programmatic need is absolutely silent on that part. Those are my initial comments.
Great, thank you very much. Just 1 second, an arrival of the high school students. Yeah, that's true. It's not even mentioning, just talks about the lower school children arriving. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Otley Brown.
So I just want to say that this application is not ready for prime time.
Right.
Plain and simple. It shouldn't have even been on the calendar. It should be dismissed. But that being said, let me go through my comments as quickly as possible. I would have to say almost all of them are echoes of what the 2 of you have been saying ahead of me. And so that's why I'm going to try and go through quickly and briefly. The statement of facts and findings reads more like a cover letter than a statement, doesn't even begin to analyze the situation in order to meet the findings. It's lacking in basic information like how many children per grade, how many children actually are there now in the other sites. It's giving you incorrect information as to the side yards, saying the proposed side yards are 5 feet on each side, but the plans show 6 foot 2 inches and 4 foot 8 inches on each side. The site search, to me, that is not a site search. They're not articulating what they're looking for, and to just look within 400 feet and say there's nothing vacant, that's just not a finding. The C finding, adequate protection from air quality, noise, and traffic. To just say the building will have double glazed windows to protect from exterior noise and say there are no industrial uses in the area, why worry about this? That's problematic. The D finding, protection from traffic. They say the school is on a quiet street. We really don't have a problem, but they neglect to say that the school is around the corner from McDonald Avenue, which is loaded with truck and other commercial traffic, as well as part of a 3-street intersection of Village Road North, Van Sicklin, and Avenue U. They don't talk about that. They don't discuss where the children are coming from, if they're walking. They don't discuss anything, basically. And that's just the 7319. 7221. Their statement says a complying structure could not provide the requisite facilities that enable a school to be competitive in today's environment. Hello, can we have some detail? How many students per grade? How many students per class? How much space per student? How does this measure up with other schools? How does it measure up with the SCA manual? Well, it's not until I read the pretty well-written programmatic needs statement, which is over 100 pages, that I get to fill in the blanks. Frankly, a statement like this should have said one thing: look to programmatic needs booklet to find out everything you need to know, rather than me having to read this 15 pages of, to me, hastily put together nothingness, and then have to go and read the long programmatic needs statement. They say the proposed school capacity is 475, but right now it's 275. And there's no knowing how long it's actually going to take to get to a capacity of 475, because if you look at the year-to-year projections for like 5 years that's in the programmatic needs statement, a couple of those years even have losses of students or very little gains, and then it'll hop up by like 20 students. But at that rate of 2 students 1 year, 5 students 1 year, 20 students the next year, it could take 20 years to get to 475 students. So I'm not sure they really have a need for 475 students. Let's see. Character. How can you talk about the character of the neighborhood and literally point to the fact that there is a school on the corner and so therefore we're okay? Everything in that area is 2 and 3 stories, just about everything, with maybe a handful, if even that, of buildings that are larger than 35 feet. So I don't see how they could begin to make the findings on the character. The character studies have no narrative summaries. All they are maps for us to draw our own conclusions. That's not appropriate either. The as-of-right plans are only a site plan. They don't provide any detail on why it doesn't work. You need floor plans to serve as a contrast between the proposed and the as-of-right that details the deficits of the as-of-right. As for the proposed plans, why do you need a multi-purpose room auditorium for 279 people? You don't even talk about the different functions that are going to require that all of the students in the beginning, or at least half of the students, need to be in one place at the same time. Same thing for the midrash, which accommodates 150 people. Why do you need 150 when each class accommodates only 25 people and there are only 2 classes per grade? Are you going to have 3 grades using this midrash at the same time? But there's no discussion about that. So how could we even know? The rooftop recreation area, is it fenced in? Is it lit? What is it used for? We don't really know. The multi-purpose room, large enough for all students to have lunch in one of 2 40-minute lunch periods. Well, Why do you only have 40-minute lunch periods? Why not 3? There's no discussion of why a smaller space isn't going to accommodate their needs either. So all in all, there's a lot of information we need before we could even begin to analyze this case and see whether or not they meet the findings for either the 7319 or the 7221.
Agreed. I just want to verify one thing. Above the kindergarten level, there's only 1 class per, not 2 classes per grade.
Sorry, one class per grade. That even makes my point even more.
Right.
Are you having half of the school in the midrash at the same time?
Right, right,
And why couldn't they use the multi-purpose room?
right. Okay. Agreed. All right, thank you very much. Commissioner Sheta. You're muted. Commissioner Sheta, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just, it told me. Okay, I wanna thank whoever spoke before me. You made my my job much easier. I'm not gonna repeat what is said, but I did have a question regarding how many students per class in the currently existing school and how many classrooms in the current existing school. And to just summarize, I believe in like a very brief way, I don't think this is the site to have a school there. I believe this location, considering that they didn't provide us with a search criteria, there is no clear search effort for an alternative site in the neighborhood. I believe this site is going to be a nightmare for the neighborhood and for the school. I wouldn't send my kid to a school with a side yard that's less than 5 feet that's going to be used to check in my kid. If something happened, it's going to be a problem. If some sort of emergency arise, and I've been like through something like that before, it's not going to be a nice situation for the kids and for the school. So with a tiny site like this, I believe the only way to go for them was to make that building 6-story building. And I just want to give you an idea about how where is the site located and how the buildings around it look like. This is the site right here. And as you can see, like typically the majority of the buildings are probably 2 to 3 story, maybe even some of them are just 1-story building. In exception of this building, I don't see like a taller than 3-story building. So this building is gonna look odd with that 6-story rising height. So I really commend them to find another place and to make the lives of their students and parents like much easier. I have nothing else to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Shabeta?
Thank you, Chair. I share many of the comments of the commissioners who went before me. This was a quirky application. I think it's scarce at places, and then it becomes quite contradictory. You know, simple things like initially when we're talking about neighborhood context and parking, this is when we're talking about parking, this is a quiet block, and that was convenient for that argument. But then when we're talking about neighborhood character, oh, this is a busy block with a really big school next to it, and not really talking about how those two things can be contradictory. They're saying that they anticipate they have needs of 475 students, but the increases that they project don't reflect that, and they don't coincide that statement with what they're showing in the programmatic needs analysis. And with regard to the programmatic needs analysis, it's long, but it's not tailored to what the project actually needs and how the children move through the classes, what the purposes of certain spaces are, and more importantly, you know, when it comes to that e-finding, like no argument as to whether or not this is the most efficient, best way to address the issue. I think that Commissioner Sheta does state something that, and Commissioner Otley Brown stated something similar to the fact that have they actually done, have they checked if this is the appropriate, if there's nothing more appropriate for them than this particular lot. I don't see that in their statement. I don't see that in their analysis. I agree that this application was a bit difficult to put together when reviewing it. I wish it was more finely tuned, but I think that with the material in front of us, we don't have enough to make a decision. We don't, and I think that they should go back to the drawing board and really take the statements that were made today and see if they could either find another property or make an application that can be convincing with regard to this one.
Thank you. I do want to note, so this was taken off calendar like 3 years ago, right? And so at the urging of staff, the applicant was told you need to essentially fish or cut bait. And so kind of at the last minute, they came up with a so-called programmatic needs, therefore a design for the school. And obviously they did it so fast that they, did sort of this generic school that's probably not responding to the actual needs of the school. And that's pretty evident in the review. So it's clearly a generic school that isn't looking into what they actually need. So anyway, all right, thank you.
Anything else? That's it?
No, anybody else?
Okay.
Let me just, I think obviously there's lots of seeker issues. So we're going to need everything and it's all in its infancy and not even sure.
Tracy has her hand up.
Tracy, go ahead.
Yes, so far we've sent the EAS to DOT and school safety and the hazmat, as we started the hazmat review, but we're still waiting on air quality and noise, the analysis to be complete. And we would like an assessment of impacts to the outdoor recreation area because that was not included. And we're still waiting for the shadows assessment as well in Jamaica Bay form.
Right. It's interesting, shadows. Actually, I didn't pay attention to where this building is relative to that school playground, but that's a sensitive receptor and it may well cast a shadow on the school playground. So.
And also a parkland in front of it.
Oh, there's parkland in front. Okay. So we may have those issues as well. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so this concludes the public review session. We'll now commence with the public hearing.
Mhm.
So now this is the Board of Standards and Appeals public hearing for March 23rd, 2021, 10 a.m. session. The first item up is appeals calendar, continued hearing items, item number 21, 2019, 2068. A, 235 Industrial Loop.
This is Todd's case, right?
Mhm.
There's, Todd usually comes on to Zoom, but there's one person. Oh, he has his hand up. There we go. Okay. Proceed to unmute yourself. You dial *6 if you're calling in.
Morning, Todd Dale for the application.
Okay. Yeah.
You don't need to be sworn in. Proceed, Doug.
Oh, all set. So we did listen to review session for 235 Industrial Loop. I don't believe there were any outstanding questions. And just to know for the record, we agreed to all of the fire department conditions that were issued in the fire department's letter.
Okay. So on this one, I believe they also required sprinkler system. Did you on this one amend the plan to show sprinklers?
No, the note was on the plan.
It was on the plan already. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Any comments from commissioners? Otherwise, we can go to the public. Okay, let's go to the public quickly.
So this application that we're currently discussing is 2019-68A, 235 Industrial Loop, Staten Island. You're calling in is 646-558-8656. Zoom webinar ID number is 947-3033-4771, and the passcode is 866583. If you're in the Zoom room already, please *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute.
Okay, just let's give it a few more seconds. We can see there's a really long time delay. Yesterday, we heard the time delay was super long. Okay, so there is actually nothing to submit. So I think, and there are no, well, the conditions would be the fire department's conditions, which have already been agreed to. You've agreed to them sort of verbally with fire department, right?
Correct. We've had communications and just as background, the earlier outstanding issues were resolved with respect to industrial loop as a whole, which was what caused the few adjournments for this application. So
Right.
going forward with industrial loop, at least that issue is taken care of, and it'll just be on a case-by-case basis.
All right then. So
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, this is Deputy Chief John Daly. I have an internet connection, so I'm able to call in. I just wanted to comment. I do want to apologize for the long delay, but we had a lot of issues at Industrial Loop, and that the borough commander for Staten Island is now in support of this application and the next one, 191 Industrial Loop. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, we have your letter of no objection, and there were a number of sort of conditions on it that we'll just include in the resolution. Is that?
That is satisfactory. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chief Daly. Okay, so then we can
Motion to close?
motion to close. Yes, there's nothing to submit, so
Yeah, no submission. Chair Perlmutter,
aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta. Commissioner Sheta, I couldn't hear you.
Aye.
Aye. Commissioner Shabeta.
Aye.
That's okay, it's closed. Item number 22, 2019-195A, 191 Industrial Loop, Staten Island.
Good morning, Todd Dale for the applicant again. Again, from review session, the fire department issued its no objection letter with respect to DEP. Chair, as you noted, there is a master plan approved for the entire site. As far as the individual SCP application, it has been filed. The reference number was provided, I guess, to a different division of DEP that reviews these applications. We also sent a copy of the SCP files to the division that reviews the BSA applications this morning. And we fully expect the approved SCP shortly, just it's not approved quite yet.
So when you say shortly, what do you mean by shortly?
Based on the timing of the last one, a couple of weeks. I don't want to speak for DEP, but estimating it based on other approvals, we'd say a week or two. Also, Suresh Kumar we had a good conversation with him, both about this application and also going forward, because I know our office has a couple more industrial loops about what DEP is expecting for these applications. I would guess 2 weeks, but that's just an estimate.
Okay. Maybe I'll round it up to 3. Okay, in terms of putting this on for decision,
Sure.
we can close with this and then just wait for their sign off. Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, good. So let's open to the public.
The application we're currently discussing is item number 22, 2019-195A, 191 Industrial Loop, Staten Island. If you are calling in, it is 646-558-8656. Zoom webinar ID number is 947-3033-4771. Passcode is 866583. And if you're in the Zoom room already, please raise your Zoom hand by pressing *9. *6 is to unmute to speak.
Okay. So just giving it a little bit.
Mhm.
So 515, last 3 digits, that's Todd, right?
I'm through Zoom, so I don't think that's me.
Oh, you're through Zoom. Okay.
Fire
so
department.
Dale, that's fire department. Okay.
7515 Fire
Yeah.
Department.
Right. Okay. So Chief Daly, did you want to add anything or you don't need to?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right. So then I would like to make a motion to close on fire department conditions.
Chair Promoter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, really? Again?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe
Aye.
it's me.
No, it's not. I did, same for me. Say it again.
Oh.
Commissioner, he said aye.
Oh, we did. Okay.
Commissioner Shabeta?
Aye.
Okay. The application is closed.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Todd. Zoning calendar, new cases, item number 23, 2018, 13BZ, 30-32 Village Road, North Brooklyn.
Good afternoon, Lyra Altman from the Law Office of Lyra Altman. With me today, I have Adam Naeem. I don't see him on, oh, there he is. He's the architect on the project. And we have Lynn Friedman, who is the programmatic needs consultant on this project. We heard all of your comments, and we think it would be best to respond in writing.
I need to swear you in though, even though you're probably gonna not say too much, but okay.
Go right ahead.
Just let me everybody swear in. Lynn, Adam. So do you affirm to tell you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony for this board, and to respond honestly to board member questions?
Of course.
I didn't hear you, Lynn. Okay. She's muted, and Adam.
Sorry, yes, sorry. Yeah.
Okay. And Adam. No, whatever. Okay.
Adam,
Adam,
can you?
please unmute and acknowledge Tony Matias.
He's not hearing us.
Oh,
there he is.
yes. Mr. Naeem, please respond. So sworn testimony request.
Okay. He won't,
Okay.
if he has to speak, we'll swear him in, otherwise.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Altman.
All right, as I said, we listened to all of your comments at executive session. We have already had a brief conversation in between while you were having the other items. We have agreed that we would be glad to go back and reassess everything in light of all of your comments. And we would like to submit in writing, please.
Okay. All right, that sounds good. I would recommend also that at your next appearance, whenever that is, you come with the school administrator.
Absolutely.
Right? And people who are in a position to make decisions on behalf of the school. Okay, all right.
We'd be
Understood?
glad to do that.
Okay. All right then. Any other comments from commissioners? I mean, you heard lots and lots of comments. So I would recommend, of course, that you write down what you heard on review session, and there's even a technique for some kind of transcribing.
We've already done that. And we, of course, will go back and review to make sure we didn't miss anything in all of our notes.
Okay. And all right, so then let's go to the public. I don't know if there's any members of the public who would like to speak on this, but let's give it I'm going to actually time it now, because if anyone's listening, we need to give them time to dial in. So go ahead, Tony.
The application we are currently discussing is 2018 13BZ 30-32 Village Road North in Brooklyn. This is a proposal for a school. The telephone number is 646-558-8656. The Zoom webinar ID number is 947-3033-4771. The passcode is 866583. If you wish to, you're in the Zoom room, you want to speak, it's *9, please raise your hand, and *6 to unmute.
Okay. All right. So I'm actually timing this for 2 minutes because it seems like we had a 2-minute time delay on the YouTube video. And so in the meantime, how much time do you need to significantly overhaul this application?
We would like a few months if possible to make sure that we have enough time, because we would like to give you a full submission this time. As I'm sure you noticed in my letter regarding the DOB objection, we already have that on file with DOB requesting the revised objection. We've had it in there for well over a month already, and we just haven't received it from DOB. With respect to the letter from the real estate broker and from the client discussing the site search, again, that's been requested for a long time. We're waiting on that from our client. The rest of it, we will certainly be glad to go back to regarding the programmatic needs study and the plans.
Okay, so I just want to put this all in perspective. This was submitted in January of 2018. So it's almost like beyond the anniversary of 3 years, right?
We do understand that.
It
We
was
acknowledge you're correct.
It was taken off calendar in 8 months later in 2018 and received a dismissal warning letter 2 years later in September of 2020. So what I want to say is we can't drag this out indefinitely. It already feels like it's been indefinite. If your client is not ready with an application, they should withdraw it. So I'd say we can give you 4 months to put together an application. But if you're not ready, and if we see something submitted like we saw, which by the way takes an enormous amount of time for staff and commissioners to review, and is viewed by all of them as a waste of time. So you can see the frustration expressed by all of the commissioners. So it doesn't start off casting your application in a good light. So I'd have to say that your next submission has to be perfect, or we'll move to dismiss it for simply not being ready.
We understand.
Because really we've been entertaining this for far too long. Okay.
We understand and we don't disagree with your board.
Okay. All right. So is 4 months enough time?
We believe it should be. At least I do. Lynn, Adam, do you agree that 4 months should be sufficient?
I'm fine. I mean, most of the things we have answers for already, and the few things that we don't, we'll get that information and put it in. It's not a problem.
Right. But, one thing I want to know, and we all appreciate Ms. Friedman's work on these programmatic needs reports. Most of the time, they're much more informative because the school knows what it wants to do, right? This read really, as a couple of us have said, as a generic report for kind of any old school, not any old school, any old school of this particular discipline, right? And so I think part of it is that usually programmatic needs reports are used for an iterative process with the school, where the programmer says to the school, these are the kinds of things you need for a school like your school. And so I want to make sure that those things are included in the school. But as opposed to sort of backing into it, right? So there's a lot of pushback about the size of this building. All of us think it's too large for this site, right? So the instruction really needs to be to whittle down the size of the school to be right-sized for the site. And we had another school like this, I believe it was Jay Goldstein's project, which was on a small-scale residential block, which ended up not going anywhere because it was, for one, there was a lot of opposition from neighbors, but even independent from that, it was a 2-story community where they were proposing like a 5 or a 6-story building, and the board pushed back and eventually they withdrew the application. So if there's any hope for this project at all, it has to be right-sized for the neighborhood, and this is far from right-sized. So, okay. So then I don't see anyone calling in. There's only one person in the waiting room may be there permanently. That name is just showing up for days and days. So, so if that person would like to speak, please raise your Zoom hand. Otherwise, we will set this up for 4 months. I may add another month to it. I'm thinking 5 months. So to make sure there's enough time. Okay,
Thank you.
all right.
Okay, this concludes the public hearing for March 23rd, 2021, 10 a.m. session. We shall resume at 2 p.m.